Hi, my name is Ajay D'Souza. I run WebberZone.com, and in this video, I want to bring to you a new feature that I've introduced in Knowledge Base version 3.1. In the Pro version, you now have the ability to sync your documentation directly from one or more GitHub repositories. If you're running the multi-product mode, you can add a repository per product and specify which folder of the repository to fetch your documentation from. For more than a decade, I've been doing the articles and the documentations manually. I have to be honest and say it wasn't fun, which is probably why my documentation lagged quite a bit over the long period of time. But with my increasing use of AI, particularly the couple of cloud skills that I have now built that allows me to automatically update the docs, check for errors, and check for my writing style, and hence create really good documentation for the plugin. The benefit of that approach is that I do not have to keep track of which articles to edit, because this feature in Knowledge Base Pro will do that for you. So let's get started to see what's new in this GitHub integration. What you see on my screen here is a brand new GitHub tab that gets added or that you will find in the settings page of Knowledge Base Pro version 3.1. It's pretty straightforward to set all of these up. The webhook feature is still a work in progress beta, I would say, that allows you to automatically update your site when you update the docs in the repository. It's not one I'm super keen about because I lose control. Also, I have unnecessarily pushes that happen. However, the rest of the settings are designed pretty much for giving you complete control of when you want to import or export the docs from or to GitHub. You do need to set up a GitHub personal access token. The minimum settings that you have are read only if you only want the imports, but I highly recommend setting a read and write so that you can also push any edited docs back into GitHub. This is particularly important if you like to edit your articles directly within the WordPress editor. You can verify the tokens once you've added them in, refresh the repository list as you have. What's really cool about this feature is the ability for you to import any external media. This means that you can store your images on GitHub, or alternatively, if they're on any other sites, we'll automatically import it into the WordPress media library and rewrite the URLs to point to this existing site. The auto push and save feature is something I don't recommend enabling. It is where you can update an article over here and then push it back into GitHub. I prefer doing it manually through a separate screen, so we'll do it that way. What you'll see over here is I've already added quite a few of my plugins through the various trials that I have done over the period of time. And hence what you have over here is an example of the various settings that you'll go through. Why don't we do one thing? Why don't we switch to a different tab on my live WebberZone site? So, well, here you go. First thing first, set up a new fine-grained token. You can click this link, which will require you to sign into GitHub and do it that way. Once you get the token, you add it over here and save the page. It's quite important that you add the settings and save the page, because without that, many of the other features may not necessarily kick in as easily. Let's look through the various settings for the entire thing, but maybe let's add knowledge base itself as one of the repositories against my plugin. So you click the add repository button. I've already added my various products. If you haven't added the products, then you should actually do that if you're running a multi-product mode. Once I've added the products, I can select it over here. This personal access token allows you to override the global one. You don't really need this simply because of the fact that in an ideal scenario, you're using one account to store all your repositories. This is the cool bit. Remember, we refresh the repositories. So why don't we just type it out? I store these within WebberZone knowledge base. As you can see, I also have a pro repository, which is private, but the docs are stored in the public repository knowledge base. I put these in a docs folder. It's very important that you put the correct path in there. If you don't do this, the plugin will break because it will not know where to find the various docs. You can choose a different branch. For example, you don't necessarily save the docs in the main folder and have it in a separate branch. It gives you the optionality, but highly, highly complicated feature if you do it that way. The next few settings are a bit critical. You can leave them as is. They're the recommended settings, but let me just go through them. The default status is either published or draft, which means that if an existing article exists, you can choose to either publish it or convert it to draft. No override means the status stays as is. In reality, most of your articles will have been already published. The duplicate handling is what do we do in case we have a slug? I should probably mention that the way the articles are imported are slug dependence. The slug is the uniqueness that decides whether an article is a new article, an article to be updated, or a complete duplicate, i.e. you have two slugs with the same name. If it detects that it has slugs with the same name, you can either create a new with a suffix slug, which is, knowledge base -2, or you just skip the importing. Ideally, you should not have duplicate slugs. The delete file handling is another one. If supposing a track file is removed from the repository, what the plugin will do is convert that article to draft so it disappears from your site as well. You can also choose to permanently delete it. This is perfect for cases where you've decided that you no longer need a knowledge base article. Note that your website can have 404 errors if this happens. Enable pushback over here if you want to push changes back to GitHub automatically. This is your override for the plugin itself. I think you do need to turn this on if you want to do the export feature. So not just automatically, but even manually. These allow you to override the commit author. In most cases, you don't need to do this. The status of enabled disabled is mainly because you may have added a couple of plugins. You choose you do not want to import them anymore. You can, instead of deleting them, you can just change the status to disabled. Once you've added all the necessary plugins, products from the repository, just save your changes. Once you have saved the changes, you head over to the GitHub menu icon. Now this has two tabs, the import and the export. We are currently importing our articles. So you can choose to import multiple docs at the same time, or in this case, we can just do the knowledge base docs, given we will have to kind of set them in over there. The force re-import button allows you to look at every article as if it's brand new and imported in over there, overwriting articles as needed. But what the plugin does in a very smart way is check if the contents of the article has unchanged, and if it has unchanged, it skips it. Once you're done, hit import docs, and let's patiently wait. As you can see, on my live site, the articles are being pulled from GitHub. In some cases, they are being created because they didn't exist before, and in other cases, they're being updated. You have the post ID, tells you which product in this case, and it flags if there are any other issues. So as you can see, we have imported 21 articles, which sits within my GitHub repository. 11 of them are brand new articles, and 10 of them have updated. You can click this link in the title to open up an article in a new window, and you click the product IDs to go into the edit screen. So for example, let's look at the exporting and importing settings. As you can see, we now have the exporting importing settings. I do want to point out this cool table of contents in the top right hand side. That is only available in the Pro version. The rating feature was also added in version 3.0 of the Pro version, which allows the user to like or dislike your article. And if they dislike it, they can give feedback on what they dislike it. But so this is the exporting option that we have within Knowledge Base. If you want to, I beg your pardon, the importing. If you want to now export any of the articles, same logic. As you can see, this is the only repository where I had set the push setting enabled. But if I do the repository mapping and I do to push it, I first get the choice of listing the articles. As you can see, we just freshly imported it. And so all the articles are updated and nothing is there to push. Well, I'm quite happy with this feature. I'm quite excited about the feature. I now have a knowledge base with, do sign up for my newsletter when you're at it. But the knowledge base plugin now has all these articles, as you can see, neatly imported over here. And the benefit of that is I don't have to worry about any of these articles being out of date because they're always up to date in my GitHub repository. I can import them at any point of time. Well, that's it for the GitHub feature. Thank you for spending the time listening to this video. If you have any questions, you can post it in the comments below, or you can find me on X under the handle Ajay D'Souza, or alternatively, just fill up a contact form on the WebberZone website. Thank you very much, and I look forward to you trying Knowledge Base very, very soon.